I recall when the Japanese only made small cars. All right, let's drive one of their biggest, the 2014 Infiniti QX80 all-wheel drive, and check the tech. Now let's be honest, the QX80 is a great big blunderbuss of a thing, and its lines make no attempt to hide that. I mean, look at this face. What is this, Fudgy the Whale? And it's cut off like a blunt piece of lumber. Out the back, you got this pouty, jutting rear bumper. Nothing about this vehicle makes apologies for its presence. Now, continuing on our big theme, back here is another zip code, another weather system. As you can see, we go on for days here. Third row, obviously. Why would you have something this big if you didn't? You can also get that second row as a bench. That lifts your passenger capacity in this thing to 8 people. You can carry all the effective members of Congress at once. By the way, if you want this thing even bigger, you can get the optional clip-on tent that's the size of a townhouse. Now inside this big boy, it's kind of an ersatz luxury. I don't think Infiniti on this vehicle does the best job with plasterwood and plastichrome, but it does say fancy. We've seen this head unit before and generally like it when we see it. This is your 8-inch touchscreen with pretty good response. You see I'm bouncing around the map here pretty easily. You've also got the Infiniti controller, which turns, kicks, and clicks. They got rid of the buttons around it, which makes good sense. Voice command is also available, so a lot of ways to run this guy. The voice command is actually quite tight. Check it out.
Please say a command.
Navigation.
Navigation. Please say a
Address.
address. What state, please?
California.
California.
Now, as you can see, it picks up what I say really quickly. The downside is when you get into the address, you've got to do state, city, street, number as independent little buckets. That's kind of old feeling at this point in history. But all in all, quite functional. Still a little bit childish looking display, good 3D flyby mode, and they do a nice job showing you what lane to be in when you get to one of those dicey freeway interchanges. So not a whole lot new there. And I will say this vehicle has about the best streaming Bluetooth I've heard, which is kind of saying something, because streaming Bluetooth doesn't sound real good. But this one does a great job of bringing it together, making good sense of the sound, and even bringing out things I don't hear in some other cars. That's impressive. Let's talk about some drive controls you don't have in every vehicle. First of all, this all-wheel drive controller right here with an automatic mode that you leave it in typically, 4-wheel high or push and turn to 4 low. You need to know about exactly nothing about off-roading to use this guy. Our shifter goes to a 7-speed automatic. The only choice, you have a shiftable gate over here that also gives you a little more of a sporty behavior. And notice when I go to reverse, you find a whole bunch of cameras go up here. This can also work for front view as well, which will do when you're creeping at low speeds. If you hit something in this car, you weren't looking. In fact, you probably had a blindfold on. Along with those cameras goes a ton of available driver assistance tech. Let's run down the list. There's adaptive cruise control, lane departure warning and prevention, distance control alert, independent braking and front collision warning and prevention, blind spot warning and intervention, backup collision intervention, and steerable front headlights. You almost can't crash this thing. And power stuff galore in this vehicle. You've got your power liftgate button over here. You've got power buttons here to drop the back seats almost violently. And there are power switches in the very back to raise and lower the seats in the 3rd row. Oddly enough, though, you get this little dinky mail slot of a sunroof and no option to make it bigger. This is way behind the times. Okay, under the not insignificant prow of this thing is a 5.6-liter V8, direct injected, variable valve timing. Beyond that, though, nothing terribly tricky about it. It's just big. 400 horsepower, 413 foot-pounds of torque. That's enough to get this nearly 3-ton vehicle up to 60 in the high 6-second range. Through a 7-speed automatic and all-wheel drive in our configuration, as I mentioned, you get about 1420 mpg. We're doing about 15 average all in. 26-gallon tank. At current California prices, it's $108 a fill-up. Let's go find out what it gets us. Now, a lot of things about this QX to drive are clearly not a driver's car set of inputs. I mean, from the pedal-actuated emergency brake to the big doughy ride, we have the adaptive suspension in this car, but it still is a big kind of a wallowy experience. Much better than I'm sure it would be without it. The power is plentiful, but you've got kind of a numb accelerator, as you'd expect on a vehicle in this category. That will modulate out any kind of jerkiness in the power delivery. And it's all sort of disconnected from the road. The steering gives you almost no feedback on what's going on. In other words, this car is perfect for the kind of person who is shopping for it. You're not buying this and cross-shopping it with a Cayenne, for crying out loud. It's a whole different animal. It's kind of in the Escalade class. You have no idea what kind of road you're driving on when you're in the QX80. You're just kind of floating above it all. Once you do get in it, though, especially if you get over here on the shifting gate, you get a nice snarl out of that V8 and a ton of power, which is actually kind of amazing that something this heavy can ever move that fast. So I gotta hand that to him. It's just not my cup of tea. Okay, let's price this giant thing. Starts off about $65,500 for a QX80. Remember, that's a V8, and I'm talking about the all-wheel drive model here, and that price does include delivery. Now the options, they all basically come in big packages. The first one is the rear seat entertainment system, which I'm gonna pass on all day. It's DVD based. If your kids are intrigued by DVD, they need tutoring, not rear seat entertainment. I am intrigued, though, more by the technology package, which includes all the driver assistance technologies, an amazing amount of them, for $3,250. And the last thing I'm on the fence on is this whole package that's deluxe touring, they call it, like $4,600. It gets you the adaptive suspension, which I think this vehicle needs. Also cooled seats, a bunch of interior trim upgrades, oh, and surround sound on your Bose audio system. Probably worth it, but there's an awful lot in there. You're looking at about $73,500 for one of these guys, done up CNET style. Not a cheap ride, but you're getting a lot of tonnage for your money, if that helps. And once you're in there, you're so isolated from the real world, you won't even remember what your payment is.